What is up, my dudes and dudettes? Buckle up, we're jumping right in and installing these flashy bits of hardware. These are the Moonraker Design Co. wall and ceiling support brackets. They get mounted high along the top of the van here, and they support our 1/4-inch Baltic birch panels as they pass over the ribs, so everything is looking nice and flush, fit, finished, and flawless. That's the only other F word that I could think of that doesn't belong in the trash. These are manufactured from 60 thou galvanized steel and bent to our specifications. You can buy something similar on the interwebs, but we are just very picky and we like things manufactured exactly how we like them, so you won't find these anywhere else. They get mounted to the roof ribs using riv nuts here in these locations, and then they have a few strategic locations where rivets go into the wall. Let's talk about why we design these, how we design these, and how we install them in our van. Let's get into it. As we walk through this step-by-step riv nutting process, let's talk about why we designed these. First off, I am anti-wood furring strip. We'll talk more about this later. Second, originally I planned on buying this kit from Timber Vans, which was reasonably priced and checked all my boxes. But unfortunately, they redesigned them to avoid having to reroute the wiring harnesses before I could buy the old design. So alas, here we are at this crossroad again, designing and installing more custom parts in our van. For those who are interested, these were completely designed with crude measuring tools, a ruler and a protractor, honestly. If you want to try something like this yourself, I do encourage it, and here's a hint: the angle between the wall and the roof is designed at 118 degrees. Also, I've been considering doing a full riv nutting for vans video breakdown. If this is something you're interested in, let us know in the comments below. Not to toot our own horns, but we are batting 100%, over 200 riv nuts in our van so far with 0 spinners. Anywhere that wires passed over the top of these, I used trim lock to protect the edge. This is another nice benefit of these, is it actually diverts the cables very well from the walls to the ceilings. If I would have known about this, I would have spent a lot less time getting creative with wire routing in my electrical phase 1 video, and simply did a single large wire bundle across a single rib. You live and you learn. With all the riv nuts installed along the roof ribs, it's time to get to the most riveting part of this video. It was a little tight down on this lower flange to fit more riv nuts since I put the side-to-side adjustment up top, and I wasn't quite sure where these holes would land exactly, so reducing the diameter for rivets seemed like the right move. I set them with the Astro 1423 manual rivet tool. So for tying into the riv nuts and the roof ribs here, we originally had these off-the-shelf button heads that are pretty low, they're pretty flush, but that just wasn't good enough for us. So we had these custom made for us. These are ultra low head Torx screws that are only 1 millimeter high. You can see that the Torx whole head is actually only just as big as the flange part of the button head. So we're removing these button heads and going all Torx across the board. The whole point of this is for this surface to be as flush as possible so that when our Baltic birch travels across here, it stays like nice and flat, and can't really have that if you've got these button heads sticking out. So let's replace them. You can see a majority of our wires from the overhead come down through here. So we've kicked this little space out here, and behind the upper cabinet there'll be a faux wall. So if we ever need to get in here and fix anything or check anything out, we'll just be able to pull that open. And all this is totally exposed. In the front of the van here, you can see it bridges across. This black ABS piece gets mounted into 2 factory holes that you drill out for riv nuts. And then the flange just gets mounted into 2 metal inserts that are threaded into that plastic piece. Just like that. That gives you a nice bridge across the front there. And here is the driver's side all finished. You can see that each of these are marked Sprinter 144 driver's side piece 2. So it goes from the back, 1, 2, 3.
I was originally going to attach the roof panels directly to these crossbars, but the bolt spacing is a little wonky, and if I need to seam on one of these, it becomes a bit of a problem. So talking to my friend James Sueda, who's also building a van, it became apparent the right thing to do was to attach structure pieces to these cross ribs as well as kick out my actual mounting locations to either side. So we drilled out strategically selected holes to prepare for more riv nuts. Also, if you happen to notice that contraption, yeah, that's custom and patent pending. It's the Swarfsucker 9000 for catching all your metal chips when drilling vertical. After the holes were drilled and deburred, we slathered on our sweet anti-corrosion sauce and added the riv nuts. I used M6 riv nuts in the roof ribs and set them with our Astro Pneumatics PRN1. For M6, I run about 85 psi, fully open on the rotary valve, and double set for good measure. Time flies when you're lapsing it up. Here's what I ended up with for my roof center supports. Let's see, what can I tell you about them? Well, first, they're metal. They're about 60 thousandths of an inch. They attach to riv nuts via the slotted holes in the middle, and then kick out to M5 riv nut holes, not inserted yet, to either side of the rib. You can see I also measure their lateral position because they have built-in guides for my cabinet supports. The M5 riv nut holes are in a spacing pattern that fits my roof panels exactly. Also, since the van ceiling is slightly curved and I wanted them to be strong, I did notch a flange that extends about 90% of the length of that flange. This allows the metal to bend to the roof contour but still be quite stiff, and as an added bonus acts as a nice cable tray and insulation holder, which you'll see a little bit later. For the very front roof rib that's over the headliner, I drilled out these factory holes for M5 riv nuts using all the best practices like step tip drill bits, tape traps, vacuuming while drilling, staying hydrated, eating a well-balanced breakfast, getting at least 8 hours of sleep the night before, cold plunging for 3 minutes while listening to a podcast called Grind O'Clock, waking up at 5 a.m. for a meditation session, subscribing to this channel, and liking and commenting on this video. You know, the basics. For this bracket, I used the same kind of notching method and slots for the attachment points to be able to curve it to match the arc of the roof rib and headliner exactly. It's pretty subtle in the front here, but you do see it starts to drop a little bit at the ends. I then put in the M5 vertical riv nuts in that we'll be attaching our ceiling panels to. Shamelessly, I also wanted to add, that's a pretty nice looking headliner shelf if I do say so myself. Did you know we make them? Head on over to moonrakerdesignco.com to check it out and our other products. One sheet sheet metal support left for the roof, and it's against the back of the van. Again, we utilized factory holes here, drilling these out for M6 riv nuts. If you're thinking about it, the reason why these are M6 versus M5 in the front is some of these holes were already too large for M5 riv nuts, so in keeping things consistent per piece, I round to the nearest common denominator, which reminds me of a math joke. How do fractions settle arguments, you ask? No one probably ever asked this, by the way, but they find a common denominator and divide their differences.
Look at our little friend here. She's got a nice smile. This is a little bit hacky, but I had my measurement slightly off here. So I took a stainless washer and I ground it down on this side so that it would make these two surfaces flush here so that I could do the riv nut there. So obviously I was aiming for this space right here, but I guess I just was going too fast.
Putting this in, and I just wanted to shout out to Nanit. I really love this thing, being able to watch the little guy sleep and get some work done while he's taking his morning nap is just awesome.
All right, this back piece, now this is a compound. You can see that it actually bends this way, and then it also arches, so it needs notches on both sides. Just disregard this. I actually just put that in there. It would make more sense if it was over here. I totally forgot about this. I put that in there on the computer. So anyways, yeah, so this turned out pretty nice. And then again, it will have the M5 rib nuts up from the bottom. We're wrapping up the final stage in this project, which is installing these bad boys. These are the rails that will be used for mounting our upper cabinets. They are made from extruded aluminum, and if you follow our channel, then you probably recognize the brackets. These were used to mount our Dometic AC on our roof, which seems like forever ago now. These brackets are designed and manufactured in-house. They've got the nice perfect angle that matches the roof ribs. They've got the relief on the back for the riv nuts, and then they have these T-slot features on the front, which provide a little bit of adjustability because the roof spacing on some of these ribs is not always consistent. Now, our actual roof supports that we put in earlier, they have a little feature here, this little pointer that helps line them up so that they're all in line when we mark and drill these holes. We've got a few more of these to install, so let's get that done.
The brackets slide into the end of the extrusion and get held in place with 4 set screws. I like to pre-Loctite these screws, but leave them loose on both ends initially. This is because the extrusion actually is slightly shorter than it needs to be to allow for some adjustment. This adjustment is needed, for example, because the bays on my van differ by about plus or minus 3 millimeters on the left versus right side of the van. I hold each of these up in the bays and accordion them to size like I'm an old polka musician. Once they are sized and centered, I tighten the set screws into place, locking the individual length in. Once the bottom set screws are snug as a bug in a rug, or a slug in a mug or a jug, give it a tug and a shrug and pull it down and tighten the top set screws, locking everything into place. Before the supports go up, we need to put up some insulation. This is because it's hard to pass the material over the top of these once installed. It's because of our stack up of Sound Deadener, Tech Van Life duct liner, and then thin slit. If you forego the duct liner, it wouldn't be a problem. In our van for insulation, we use thin slit. It's simply a much better suited material for this type of vehicle application than the alternatives. We measure and mark out the appropriate size on the scrim black side using a Pika dry pencil with the white wax lead. It shows up really nice, and then we cut it with a sharp pair of upholstery scissors. To attach the thin slit to the roof, we use the classic van spray adhesive 3M90, but we do not spray or attach it to the area outside of the roof brackets if they have wires or pass-throughs. We simply tuck it into our roof wall supports, so if we ever need to access it again, we can simply pull it back. With it tucked in, the roof support goes up and is attached using M6 buttonhead fasteners. I had to cut away a bit of the thin slit here to clear the large air conditioner wire as it passed over top of the extrusion, but I designed these brackets and extrusion size to accommodate for things like that, taking advantage of the dead space as much as possible in the roof here. didn't quite know where this was going to land without the part in hand because it's the compound angle both this way and this way. So I've got this extrusion mounted up here right now, and I have to drill a hole. I've already done it on this side, and you can see I've got a T-nut up in there and then one of these super flat head screws. So this is what it looks like when it's done. And like I said, I'm having to put the insulation in here because the insulation's got to go up before these crossbars. Otherwise you can't really fish it over the top of them. I'm assuming if I didn't have the Tech Van Life duct liner, I could. But since that takes up, 10 extra millimeters here and it's pretty stiff, that's why you can't fish that over there.
We just finished this back portion, so let's talk about the complete assembly. Now remember, this is a compound curve, so this actually curves along this surface of the van, and then we need to curve up in a rainbow so that we match the curvature of the roof ribs so that the panel sits nice and flat as it transitions between the two. Now this is not rocket science, but we added the little notches on the bottom and then notches on the back to allow us to achieve this in strategic places, and it actually turned out better than even I was expecting, which is awesome. You can see we have the Thinsulate up here. These act as a nice catch for that. The riv nuts are all installed on both surfaces. On this side, we have a nice cable tray. Since we have some cables running up there, that will keep those nice and protected. And you can also tuck the Thinsulate up behind the side supports here, which is really nice. That helps hold everything in place. And the other nice thing about this is we don't use adhesive right here because a lot of our wire bundles and everything exist right here, as well as our roof pass-throughs. So if we ever need to get access to these, we can just pull this Thinsulate down. I think that I'll probably end up doing a faux interior piece inside the cabinets so that we can get at those and maintain them if we ever need to do so. Now the last thing, to mount those cabinets, we have extruded aluminum here. We're using the same brackets that we used on the Dometic install. They work awesome. And then we're just setting it on top of this bracket and fastening it in. And these are freaking super strong. I was hanging on these today, bouncing up and down, and they do not move a millimeter, so I'm really excited about that. They run from the back of the van all the way to the front, and that is our final assembly, and we are going to continue on here. Well, my friends, that wraps up another video in the Adventure Van build series and completes phase 1 of our internal structure installation. We really hope you enjoyed it, and we are very, very happy with how this turned out. Not only is it super low profile, but it is strong as HE double hockey sticks, and that is the most important part. Safety is our #1 priority with this build. We have the little man sitting right here, and the last thing I would ever want to happen if and when it did was our cabinets flying off in the event of a crash. And metal is going to give us that strength that we need, as opposed to wood furring strips, which is kind of a mixed bag. So ultimately we went with this solution because we know the yield strength of these materials, we know the pull specifications of each one of these riv nuts, and it gives us a lot more peace of mind that this build is being put together correctly. There's a reason why vehicles are made from metal materials instead of wood. If you like what we are doing, please give us a thumbs up on this video. We really appreciate it. If you have any questions or comments, drop those down in the comments section below. I personally respond to each and every one of them. No requirement for supers or money or membership involved. We are free and open source here. If you do feel like you want to do that, we would greatly appreciate it, but no strings attached. And on your way down there, you know what to do. Slap that subscribe button, and we will see you in the next one. Subscribe button, a slap, and we'll see you in the next one. Custom roof and ceiling, custom wall and ceiling. What is up, my dudes, in today? 2 days?